Hi, this is Shelley Blanton-Stroud with Story Behind the Story. I'm here this morning welcoming Laurie Buchanan, an author of Indelible and Iconoclast, the first two books of the Sean McPherson thriller series. I think you're really going to love meeting Laurie and hearing about the story behind the story of her unique series set in a Hedgebrook writing retreat style setting. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Laurie, if you wouldn't mind starting by just situating us for readers who don't yet know your series, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your protagonist and the setting.
Okay, well, my protagonist is Sean McPherson. We all call him Mick, but Sean McPherson. And I first encountered Sean when I was a writer in residence at Hedgebrook on Whidbey Island, just off where Seattle is in Washington State. And I was there writing a nonfiction book, and I came out for a break one day, and I looked in the not too distant distance, and I saw a very attractive man, handsome man, pushing a wheelbarrow. And this man had a pronounced limp. And that right there planted a seed. And many years later, it wasn't until many years later that I gave actual birth to Sean McPherson, but that was where he came into play. And that's where I first met him. And then the cabins, or the cottages actually, in my fictitious Pines and Quill writing retreat are very much based on the cottages at Hedgebrook. And each little cottage is surrounded by thick trees. Each evening, the writers get together and they talk about their day. That happens at Pines and Quill. So it's very much patterned on Hedgebrook.
Laurie, you're kind of making me wonder if there are a dozen female novelists who were at Hedgebrook at the same time who now have novels with that man in the background.
I know, right?
So let's, for starters, what is it about Sean McPherson that when you began to explore him as a protagonist, what drew you to the idea that he would be good to be the spine of a series?
In the back of my mind, and I don't know this to be true, but in the back of my mind, I thought perhaps that the reason this man was limping might have been like an Afghanistan type situation. Perhaps he was home from war, something had happened. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for men and women who have served their country. My husband is retired military, and they have such a tremendous moral compass pointed to true north, like all the time. And I thought, I want that. I want that. Sean McPherson can have that. And that's what he has.
You know, it's funny because when I think of that true north compass, I'll often think about the character Atticus Finch.
Oh, yes.
What a comfort it is in literature to have someone who is not perfect, but someone who aims perfectly at what is right to aim for. Yeah, that's great. Well, tell us about the element of food and creativity, just as a side, before we get to the darker elements of your thriller series.
So the food is incredible. It is made by Neil and Neil McCullough and Libby McCullough, husband and wife, own Pines and Quill. Libby is the sister to Sean McPherson. And Neil is an incredible cook and a wine connoisseur. I mean, he's a gourmet chef. And so the food is incredible. And I draw my real life inspiration for the food from my husband. He is an incredible cook and he is a wine connoisseur. He is in the kitchen with an apron on, with a glass of wine, talking and working. And I do the dishes. I get to clean up, but Neil is based on him. And the dog Hemingway, the big Irish wolfhound, is based on my Willa, Irish wolfhound. So there's a lot of real life components. And so it is just this, you feel very cozy and at home, and things you can practically taste them when you're reading them, and you want them. You want the recipe. You want to call me and say, "Hey, Laura, can you email that recipe?" That's what I want.
Those recipes probably need to go up on your website. So get your husband to work on it. You know, Laurie, I recently spoke with best-selling series author Sheldon Siegel, who explained that though his books are categorized as legal thrillers, he really thinks they ought to be legal cozies. And part of the reason is that his longtime readers who've read all of his books, they want to talk most about the scenes where his protagonists are at a bar with a friendly bartender, having a cup of soup and a beer and talking about things, including family. And I was very interested to read your work to see what role the cozy element plays when adjacent to the thriller element. What do you think about that?
So for me, it is actually a tool. It is you slowly reel that reader in. They have a tremendous warmth and comfort, and then bam, they realize this is not a cozy. This is not a cozy at all. So it's a leveraging tool. It's very intentional, and you get it to this very intense part of the book, and then we come back, and then we get to this very intense part of the book, and then we come back, and it's intentional, because some of it is atrocious. I don't write horror, it's not that, but it's breathtaking, and then you need your break, and then it's breathtaking, and then you need your break. So it's very much it's very intentional.
Gosh, it seems like a yoga kind of thing. It's breathtaking, and then you need to take your breath. And that's what it feels like when you're reading it. That's very, very interesting. Another effect on a reader, I think, is that, you know, at first I'm so drawn to the surrounding characters who populate this setting because of their gentleness and their creativity and their kindness and so on. And then I begin to get frustrated, like, can't they see what's happening? And then I realize that I too am implicated because in my real life, I wander around in a friendly fashion, saying hello to people. And I think some narrator might over my shoulder be saying, can't she see what's happening? You know, so the reader has many places to place herself in your universe. Tell us a little bit about the way you structure it using those cabins, who goes in them, and what is their role in the mystery / thriller element of it.
So I always have 4 writers in residence. No matter what month we're talking about, they arrive on the first day of the month and they leave on the 21st. So they have 3 weeks carved out, protected time for writing. And each of these people, men and women, have their own cottage. One cottage is specifically set for somebody who might be in a wheelchair, who might be blind, who might need things situated a little differently. And so every single month I have somebody who has a physical challenge of some type. And so they go in and out of these cottages, and each of the cottages has their own feel to them, has their own look. 2 of them are 2-story, 2 of them are ground level, and you know, north, south, east, west. They're placed. I need to have a map, an illustrator, and put a map in my book. Somebody told me you need to do this, and I do need to do that. And so that's who goes in and out and stays in there and works. And their job, the job of these 4 people, is any one of them what you see is what you get, or is there something more to them that might be sinister? Is there something sinister about these people, or are they all, you know, friendly? Well, I'm not going to tell anybody, but they have a job. And then when times get tough, are they going to step up to the plate and help, or are they just going to stand and be bystanders and watch horrendous things happen? How can I leverage their mouths, their hands, their feet?
Oh, I love that. You made me jump in my mind immediately to the film High Noon.
Oh.
The question of when it comes down to that moment, who does what? And that's why you've got your Sean McPherson at the center of it. Fascinating. I know that you have a background in psychology, working with a variety of personality types. If you could tell us how that, and that you've published 2 nonfiction books directly related to that work, could you tell us how that influenced your writing of this thriller series?
Yes. So, in having been a holistic health practitioner, my PhD is in energy medicine, holistic health with an emphasis in energy medicine. I had the opportunity to work with, to intersect a multitude of personalities. And the 3 personalities that interest me most are the narcissist, the sociopath, and the psychopath. And we all, pretty much most of us, have encountered narcissists. We may not have encountered the other 2. A sociopath you will know because you see them coming. They do not cover their tracks. They can be aggressive. They don't have empathy for others. They look down on others because they have their low self-esteem, and by putting others down, they raise themselves up. Even though that sounds counterproductive, that's how that works. But a sociopath, you see them coming. A psychopath, now that's my baby there. You don't see them coming. They are charming. They are above average intelligence. They plan. They can be, not all psychopaths kill, but between a sociopath and a psychopath, more likely if you're going to be killed, it's going to be the psychopath. Unless something just off the cuff happens. If a sociopath just goes in to rob a bank because they couldn't afford a banana, which is what a sociopath would do, and somebody did something, they could accidentally not have planned to kill them. But a psychopath will take years to plan and cover their tracks. They're very, very hard to catch. There's a lot of sociopaths in prison. There are fewer psychopaths in prison. They're very difficult to catch. And by the way, I say women can be narcissistic, women can be sociopaths and psychopaths as well. I think, this is just from my experience, I think there are more men in those capacities, but don't hold me to that. But they're both, men and women can fill the shoes beautifully.
It's so interesting. One time I went to a mystery writing conference, and an FBI agent was talking to us. And one of the things he said was, it's surprising sometimes how easy it is to solve crimes because so many criminals act idiotically and they post what they just did on Facebook or something like that, including, with the January 6th,
Oh, yes.
The amount that they posted that was incriminating about themselves online for anybody easily to find out was kind of shocking. But what you're telling me is, when you say that prisons can be full of sociopaths, those are the people who aren't thinking very carefully about what they're doing. And the psychopaths may never go to jail because they're, planning this out so carefully.
Absolutely. And again, they're charming. They do not have the capacity to feel regret, and they don't have feelings, but they practice, they work at it. They work at their craft. They are phenomenal actors and actresses, and they do this day in and day out. They could be in the military, they can be in the clergy, they can be in government, they can be in law enforcement, they can be in the military, and they are both men and women. And again, they're above average intelligence, whip smart. They can lead 2 distinctly separate lives and get away with it. They're incredible.
Do you think that a psychopathic character that might, be part of your series, would they be more or less likely to have charisma? I'm wondering if you can fake or orchestrate the kind of persona that draws people to you, or if you can just master the niceties of what you ought to do in each situation.
I think it's more of a case of mastering, but they're so good at it, like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Uh-huh.
He over and over and over. And if you ever look at the documentaries and watch him being interviewed, extraordinarily intelligent, sweet, loving, kind, and thoughtful. just and he was so helpful, and he loved the limelight. He loved being interviewed and being able to show how smart he was. Just yeah, I think it's more mastering, but there is something that the rest of us, it's like a flasher lure that you go fishing with, and we jump on it because it's so compelling.
So I'm thinking that the way the psychopathic personality type works, that makes someone who's good in your series to continue from book to book, because it would be hard to come up with a psychopath every time.
Absolutely. And I do have Giorgio the Bull Gambino. He's the crime boss, the crime father, a kingpin. And he's got a trifecta of cities. He's got New Orleans, San Francisco, and the greater Seattle area. So I'm able to move my people around. It's not just always going to be just right at Pines and Quill. As the stories move along, we're moving different places geographically, and that makes it kind of fun because we always come back to home base. We're always we start there and we come back there, but now we're going places. And I stole that little piece, that trick from Louise Penny. She took her characters to France, and I'm like, I can take my characters places.
It's like opening a window. It lets some fresh air in when you've been used to being in this enclosed space. I was thinking about how I believe you said today that that it takes place within the time constraints of the stay at Pines and Quill.
Pines and Quill.
Pines and Quill. And so you already have a constraint. You have a time period that limits you. So it's nice that you have a window open to go to another setting because there are already constraints that limit you.
Exactly. I've got a couple of constraints. So right from the get-go in Indelible, I tell people that my writers in residence arrive on the first day of the month. They depart on the 21st. So they're there 3 weeks. And then that last week of the month is when everybody at Pines and Quills, they can let their hair down. They get the cleaning done. If they need to go visit somebody, they can get that done. And Pines and Quill is open January through October. It's closed November and December. They don't have, that's just their family time. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but I'm going to do something spectacular and then hit it again in the January timeframe. But something's going to happen over the holiday season. I won't have guests there, and we're going to see what's going to happen.
Wonderful. I even wonder about your possibility, since it's modeled a little bit on Hedgebrook, the possibility of a former guest at the retreat, now having achieved great success, returning as a bad guy. I don't know.
I don't have that particular scenario, but I do have Cynthia coming back. Cynthia comes back, and she's the one who is somewhat of a psychic, and she is back.
Now, how much do you enjoy doing research about the proclivities of your side characters, or are you always going to use people and strengths and histories that you're familiar with? For instance, the psychic, Cynthia.
And I'm by no means psychic, but I have a touch of intuitiveness, and I draw on that. I have, in the book that I'm working on right now, Iniquity Book 4, I have a mariner pilot. Now, my husband's an airplane pilot, but I have a mariner pilot. And the research I'm doing right now has taken me, kaboom, my head wants to explode, but it's really interesting and fun. I do research on the weapons that I use, but I also shoot a Ruger GP 150. I shoot it. I draw on that. I ran away from home when I was 15, and I stayed gone for 5 years. And during that time, there were some breathtaking things that happened to me, and end of life almost situations that I had to get out of and I had to fight. And I draw on those. So a lot of real life experience, my handicap type situations. My grandfather was blind, double amputee, and so forth. My sister was 100% deaf in one ear and only had 10% hearing in the other ear for the longest time, and she's fully hearing now. But I draw on those experiences to weave in authenticity.
It really works. Your characters are very authentic. It's not a plastic or pasted on facade.
Thank you.
Yes. I was also wondering, that you bring up your own history, running away from home and staying away for 5 years and having, breathtaking experiences of your own that are educating you about experiences your characters might have had. And yet you are really impressively optimistic and can-do and hopeful as a citizen in the literary world. So tell me about that hopefulness in your series, because it's not every thriller series that has a hopefulness at its heart.
And that is what you will find with each Sean McPherson novel. The underlying foundation is hope, and that's also very, very intentional. Everyday life, we wake up, we see the news, and we're slapped down. We wake up the next day, slapped down. We go to bed, we have a clean slate, wake up, slapped down. And I want to offer hope and justice, not vigilante justice, but justice. And justice isn't just this person got what they got coming to them. Justice is also positive in that people who are survivors or the victims, survivors, there is compensation or restitution of some type. And true justice also is that the punishment won't outweigh the crime. So justice has many, many facets to it. And so I want to show that real justice can be done, and there's things to hope for, but justice many times comes at a price, and hence the one book, then the next book, and the next book, because it comes at a cost, and sometimes the cost is a life, and I'm, as a writer, willing to take those lives on paper.
I love that you mentioned justice, because it kind of dovetails with what you were saying about Sean McPherson as a character and as a person we really believe in, because very often the core premise of a thriller is that someone needs to seek justice. And you do get that feeling about Sean McPherson, that he is a seeker of justice on behalf of people who maybe cannot seek it for themselves. Although, really, I don't know if you ever saw the Clint Eastwood film Unforgiven. Have you seen that? Actually, it's fascinating. It's the only one of his that I'll say you should watch. And the reason why is because it was his first film about about how the things you do, even in pursuit of justice, you'll never be forgiven for them. And so you have to deal with the question, do I still do them? Do I kill in order to seek justice, even if I will never be fully redeemed? And so it makes me think a little bit of Sean McPherson. What cost is he willing to bear to do the right thing?
And that is coming up hugely in the book that I'm working on right now. We are just on the heels of the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and her trial, and what came out of it, that she was indeed guilty of trafficking underage women to Epstein and others, and so forth. And I am, although I had this in my head before that came out, I'm able to follow these news stories and get more informed. I wasn't very informed in that world before. And so it's right there it's low fruit right now to be able to pick that. And so I'm able to grab headlines right now and see where justice or injustice comes into play with this very thing, because Giorgio the Bull Gambino is trafficking humans, and he's trafficking drugs, and he's trafficking weapons. And so that happens to be very timely for book 4, which won't come out until 2024, but I'm sure it'll still be in the news. Well,
my overall feeling about reading your work is that your series is actually very well attuned to what readers might be seeking now, because a lot of us who are longtime thriller readers just kind of crave the way we can move through it, be transported somewhere else, have these emotional highs and lows, and so on. But the thing that distinguishes your work is that moral core and the feeling of hopefulness. It's not, the tone is not unrelentingly bitter or cynical. It's hopeful. And in the world today, I think we need a little bit of that, even in our thrillers.
Exactly.
One last question, Laurie.
Mhm.
If you were to explain to readers, if you like X, then you'll like my series, the Sean McPherson.
I was told by somebody in my publishing house that when she read Indelible, she said, "Oh my gosh, Laurie, this is Chief Inspector Gamache meets the last Mrs. Parrish." And I thought, I like that. And she said, use it. But my heroes are Louise Penny, Chief Inspector Gamache, and Anne, and all of a sudden her last name just, Anne Cleves, Vera Stanhope. They are my heroes. I love them, and I hope that Sean McPherson can be like her characters one day, and that's what I'm striving for, is a very strong, long-lived series.
Well, I will tell you, I have a friend who's a complete Gamache fangirl, so much so that she and her husband recently took a vacation that was a Gamache vacation, tracing places that appear in those novels. So I'm thinking you need to have an aid to readers who need to travel in Sean McPherson's route.
There you go. That sounds great.
Thanks so much for talking to me today, Laurie. I hope a lot of readers pick up this series because it's really fantastic.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed myself tremendously. Thank you.
Okay.